course it's not bad for you, friends. Don't be ridiculous. The Creator didn't make plants to make us sick. Man made drugs to make us sick. Okay? It's not hard to work out. And now that the governments around across the plains are legalizing the use of cannabis as a medicine, still most of the troglodytes who believed all the bullshit they were taught about cannabis when they were children, they want to hang to their childhood memories. But the uncomfortable truth is that cannabis nurtures and nourishes something called your endocannabinoid system. I believe it's linked to the endocrine system, or it is the kind of foundation of the endocrine system and enables that. So cannabinoids are your friend, and the plant that has the highest number of cannabinoids in it is cannabis. What a surprise. I am, just for those who still think that cannabis is an evil drug, I've been smoking cannabis for 30 years. After the war, I was anti-cannabis as a child, but after the war I realized I got to try some, and it kind of settled my mind. Far from causing schizophrenia, it actually settled and calmed my mind. Today is the first or second day, depending on how you measure that I haven't had anything to smoke. I'll admit that, it can feel a little bit edgy at times, a little, irritable, because part of the reason I smoke cannabis is because it settles me such that I'm seldom irritable. I don't smoke it such that my mind is too slow, because you can smoke some weed that's really potent, really powerful, and I think it's been intentionally made so powerful to frighten people, or to drug people, really, to kind of really hammer them. And I visited a friend in San Diego in 2007, and we'd smoked weed together back in 1988 when I traveled America, and she pulled out some weed, and Jenny, and I got absolutely plastered. I could barely think. I could barely talk. And that's not fun for me. That's like, that has to be like a Saturday night and you want to get blinded, kind of, by it. And that's not really my idea of a fun time. Not anymore, anyway. I wanted to make this point that, if it was such a harmful, bad thing, and that the withdrawals and all of that kind of thing that they try and characterize in the mainstream lying media was true, then I would be really struggling today, without anything to smoke. Fortunately, I haven't had nicotine, cigarette tobacco in. A lot of people mix that in, and I haven't done that for years now, so I don't have the nicotine withdrawal to contend with, because that's much harder. I think that's harder than the cannabis thing. I mean, to be fair, it depends on what's going on in your life at the particular moment in time here. But I think the universe is asking me just to take a pause from that because, well, as you may know, my home grow was interrupted last year because I think because someone came and stole some from me, and then that led to a parent getting upset, or a woman, I should say parent. A 22-year-old boy stole some from me. I think that led to me having a visit by the police, storming through my house and stealing my plants and upsetting my child and wife. And so that was the one thing. And then on the other side, I've been, not really flush. So buying this very overpriced, thanks to the government's draconian bullshit on it, buying this overpriced plant in dried form has become financially untenable for me. And And then just the other day, a pal tried to rip me off. Pal. And actually, this is what I see. Anyway, that greed isn't what I'm going to talk about now. I think the universe is kind of giving me a little sign to say, stay away for a little while, see what happens. And, you know, I mean, I hope to do my own grow in the future, and not at this house, but I hope to grow in the future again. And you know, it is an absolutely, it is a medicine, as I said earlier on. Sorry, it is a medicine, as I said earlier on, and I think that I use it and need it, and whether it be topically on a skin condition, or ingested in oil form, or in any other way. A friend of mine gave me some of the dark oil, the concentrated, what they call Rick Simpson oil, and I've been using it on this lump on my head. So I think it made a difference. Although I'm also using hydrogen peroxide now to try and kill it off if it's a fungus. Anyway, I mean, that's just, I just wanted to make a short video, partly because my last video stream got interrupted by the battery dying, and that had left it up as though I was still streaming, and I didn't want for that. Oh, I didn't want for that to be showing as I'm still live. So I thought I'd make another video, and what came to mind was a little bit of mockery of those who support this system still. You know, whichever way you support it. You know, if you're not willing to look at things, then you are tacitly agreeing to this system. If you're not willing to call it out, then you are agreeing to this system. You are the weak man. What is it they say? Well, they say when good men do nothing, evil triumphs. Well, we're all good men, but it is an evil on this world, or a curse on this world, for us not to be upstanding, good men, men of goodness, men of, some might say men of God, but I don't want to use the term because it is a trigger term that seems to cut some people out of the conversation. We're meant to be good men. We're meant to be decent souls, humans, and uplifting ourselves, uplifting this world. We've been too caught up in our bigotry, or our whatever it is. And you know why the mudblood Tartaria thing is really fascinating to me? Because it means that this reality that we live in, I'm in London right now, but this probably applies to most people, is that, you know, we haven't actually been here, us. This current history, this current story hasn't been here that long. You know, maybe a few hundred years is what the evidence seems to show. Maybe less. Maybe less. I've got a feeling that there are mud floods occurring at times in history, perhaps during the 40s when there was a war that they were hiding it. They were using it to hide it. Same in the Middle East. They shut it all down. Ooh, don't go there, don't go there. But it means that if it's real, if it's true, that we can there's something much more than simply the flat earth that they're hiding from us. It has to do with our ancestry. It has to do with who we are, you know. And these questions have never really, even when we were I was looking in flat earth. The question of who we are and what our history is and how this construct is designed and controlled and managed and so on is far more complex than simply a few ne'er-do-wells in the Vatican decided that they could crush the human spirit by making them think they were tiny ants running on the underneath of a ball. I guess that's the Pope's ball. If you're still into your balls, you know that it's all gay, you know, homosexual imagery and so on. All the balls, all the rockets going up into the female sky. Well, that's not gay, is it? But it's the penis worship through the rocketry and the obelisks and so on. And the cock and the balls, they go together, don't they? You know. So there may be something actually in that, but it's much more than just a few strange creatures out of the Vatican, and their odd, followers from the religious, the royal houses and so on. It's much more than that. It's our entire identity that is now in question, and as to who we are, how we're connected to the pre-mud flood societies, how after the mud flood were we seeded back into these places, these cities and so on. How was that done, and where were we before that, and who's overseeing this? It's much, much more than just a lie about Aristophanes and Newton, and this is just, and you have to think that, gosh, did these guys even ever exist? How much of our history is just all fabrication? And how many times have they gone around a cycle of a flooding and a recreation and so on? I was talking yesterday about how the Cape Flats around the fort or the castle in Cape Town was perhaps once nearer to the water, and a mud flood went through there and changed the topography. I was listening to Martin Luther. Hey, while I'm talking names, I just want to say Richard Lopez. I've mentioned a few names recently, and I haven't mentioned his. So, hey, thanks for having me on your show recently. I do appreciate that, bro. And sorry, I haven't been able to share it on my own channel. I just don't know how to do all of these things. But I appreciate his energy that he's putting into this. And for me, it's, the mud flood, the Tartaro thing is far more tangible. So Martin Luther was talking to Lee, or was talking to someone about, no, I think he was talking to Philip Drusen about Angola and Zambia and these places that I had some experience of in my lifetime. And when I went through Angola in 1987 as a soldier for South Africa, national service, by the way, if you think that I chose it, no, I didn't. What I was surprised by was the amount of beach sand that you actually have in Angola. It's like, we used to drop our 20-ton vehicles. It was one of the standing jokes, dropping the 20-ton vehicles into the sand was a matter of course. Skilled drivers got better and better at navigating that, but the deep sand, we would be walking into sand, waist high. The trucks and the lorries would be just carving huge tracks into this super soft sand. In fact, our military had chosen wheeled vehicles over tracked vehicles for combat primarily, because they were far more agile and nimble in that sand. And when their tanks, our South African tanks, finally joined sort of towards the end of the conflict that I was in, we did find that these 50-ton tanks were needing us to kind of guide them way through the jungles, because it was so heavily silted up. So you got these jungles growing in seems beach sand. In fact, in my book, I wrote my book before I knew about the flat Earth, and then in my book I talk about how it's like I think I used the term a Saudi oil sheikh's wet dream, because it's just desert but green. It's like a desert, but it's a green desert. Angola, much of where we, the area we traveled in. And why I'm interested in or sharing this with you is because the people that we came across in that region of Angola were some of the most disconnected from modernity folks that I've ever come across. And living in Africa, you do come across the old mud huts, and you connect with people who are living the simple life. But the people I found in Angola, or the people we encountered in Angola, very, very few, few and far between, they were living the most basic, simple lives in mud huts. And I want to offer you this on the conversation of mud flood, is that some areas will get mud flooded such that they lose 1 or 2 stories of the buildings. They have to forget 1 or 2 layers of the buildings, and the whole sort of city gets pushed up by 10 feet or more. And then sometimes it'll be a case that the mud flood will inundate an area that there is no trace left of any buildings or any that man was ever there. But there may well be pockets of survivors, and these folks they're cut off from the rest of the world. The rest of the world perhaps never ever goes there again, not for 50 years, 100 years, and when they do, they come back with guns. But when those that have survived, obviously, with what little they have to kind of make a very, very, very simple. They have to create a very, very simple existence for themselves. And that's something that I thought about when I think about that. Those people that we saw, and the nature of the land that's there, is that these are perhaps people whose forefathers survived floods, and who knows how many people were in southern Africa before there was a major mud flood, and that took it out. One of the sort of preferred versions of history is told by white historians, maybe black historians too, but certainly the European story of southern Africa is that when they arrived in the Cape, there was almost nobody for hundreds of miles into the land. There were no people there. Now we know that the star fort that's there and so on indicates that there had to have been a civilization. There had to have been people there, but that perhaps they got flooded out. Anyway, those are my ramblings, my thoughts. I started with cannabis. Cannabis is I mean, it's, I suppose it's a bit like some other things. You can overdo things. You can, as I said, you can get this really powerful weed that can knock you back on your haunches, and make your mind dull. But one of the things that perhaps cannabis isn't good for, but cocaine is good for, is that, say, if you want to be in a left brain business environment, then cocaine is the drug of choice. Everyone knows that the Wall Street used to, probably still does, run on some kind of super steam upper. Well, cannabis, on the other hand, is much better for if your life involves sitting underneath a tree and contemplating the nature of things. So cannabis is not a plant for you if you're into the rat race. If you're a rat and you like running, you like chasing your tail, and you like beating your neighbor to have the better house, the better car, the better job, the better salary, and cannabis isn't for you either. I'm not suggesting you try cocaine, but I'm drinking a bit of the acceptable cocaine. No sugar, which is super cocaine, but I got some caffeine going on here. Yeah, so don't do cannabis if you care about working for the man. I used to work for Westminster City Council. There's only 2 cities in London. There's the City of London, and there's Westminster City Council, or Westminster City, the City of Westminster, I should say. And the City of Westminster is famous for having the Westminster Cathedral and Houses of Parliament and Downing Street and Trafalgar Square, and all of those places are in the city of Westminster. And I used to work in their HQ, which is on Victoria Street. They've got some deep basements in those buildings. Again, I don't think they were originally necessarily basements. You know, I think the street level again has risen up. But that wasn't what I was going to say. I was going to say, because it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to get a job with a man. I used to smoke cannabis outside City Hall, out the back, you know, because it was the only way I could see myself through the day. Man, it was anyway. I used to work for the system, and now I just get letters of complaint from the system. You haven't paid this bill. You've been walking with no shoes on. You had an argument with someone. You're growing a plant. Am I moaning too much? It may have something to do with the fact that I'm not smoking. I think a few subscribers left my channel over the last couple of days. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's to do with some of the things that I'm saying at the moment. Maybe it's to do with other things. I don't know. I'm interested in it. I'm not going to concern myself by it, but I am interested. Because I ain't here for the likes. I'm not here for the votes, the popularity contest. Because if I was into the popularity contest, I'd also be avoiding the cannabis, and I'd also be doing some of the other things, or avoiding saying things. But as the days go by, I feel the pull increasingly to be the voice, be a voice. And you know, I was referring earlier on to the conversation Bro Sanchez and Bob Nodell were having of Globebusters, and you know, they were talking about not wanting to be leaders and all of this sort of thing. Well, I'm afraid there is an element of responsibility that comes with having a voice, absolutely. Which is why I kind of, you know, it's hard for me to sort of respect. No, that's not the right word. It's hard for me to be too soft on preachers, you know, religious. You come across every now and again, you'll come across a religious, you know, preacher. In real world, I don't know. And you know, they are leaders. And people look to them. They have a duty and a responsibility, and they are, in my view, lazily negligent. And for that reason, they don't get much respect. I never wanted to be a leader or a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I actually said that many times. I never wanted to be a teacher. But then again, I hadn't gotten on well with school. I was fighting the school system from when I was a child, because I didn't want to buy into what they were telling me. And now I found myself having to accept that, as well as being someone who has much to learn, I have much to give people, and I should be a teacher. So I say this to all of the people who are, you know, holding platforms on YouTube or elsewhere. You know, you do have a responsibility to the people that you're giving messages to, and you know, you may not want to hear the word leader, but you know, people, unfortunately, otherwise or not, are looking for answers, and they're looking to people who've done the work, who seem sincere, who are, you know, bringing light into the darkness. Oh, we all, I mean, you know, I suspect, to be fair, most of those preachers think they're doing the right thing by the right thing by their people and those followers and so on. But the fact is that they are leaders, whether they want to call it that or not. And I respect. I admire the work that guys have done on flat Earth. You know, I may not agree. I don't agree with everything that people have done, but they are, I think, in the main, doing their best. I think I want to say something on, the most well-known names in flat Earth are, we all know who those people are, and there have been times when I've thought to myself, how? I mean, I've been in flat Earth as long as most of the well-known names, but how have these people had the time to dedicate to this? Because I have a regular life that I'm balancing with trying to do stuff here. So I have wondered that to myself. And in some cases, people are financially independent, so it's not really or they have that kind of time and so on. But I have been, let's say, critical of some of the well-known names in flat Earth. And I still think that some of the most well-known names may well be being paid to promote flat Earth. But is that such a bad thing? Because those people who argue for flat Earth and say, "Oh, don't look at mud flood, it's all about flat Earth," and then they shouldn't care whether someone was being paid to promote it or not. And I think if someone being paid to promote a model and try and hold people in that model rather than continually looking to explore other ideas and so on, then that's not so cool. But if people are out there, let's just say Mark Sargent, probably one of the most well-known targets. I don't listen to his stuff, to be honest. Because it's sort of like it's entry level, flat Earth gate post, sign posting. But let's just take Mark Sargent and say that he was a paid actor. But whatever you want to say about that, and whatever I might have said about that, he is generating content, generating interest, bringing people to flat Earth. Now, if the system is trying to get flat Earth out there and get people arguing about it, then that seems to be working quite well. That seems to be working quite well. But if you're in flat Earth, you really want the rest of the world to know that the Earth is flat. So why would we want to shoot those messengers who were bringing that truth out? I guess this is just me moving from a reactionary state of mind to a more embracing state of mind, a more encompassing, loving state of mind, a place where we, even like to say, let's use 9/11. There's a 9/11 Truth organization, which apparently is a controlled organization. And that's probably true. Same as David Icke. Probably true. Most likely true, particularly if they're not willing to go and scratch at the surface of flat Earth in any honest way. Then, true, but haven't they provided us with the awakening that we needed? For a lot of people, their gateway was 9/11, or it was in my case, and then David Icke, told me a whole lot of stuff I'd never heard before, stuff that seemed a little crazy, but much of it. So whilst I do have the odd comment on these folks not wanting to see the flat Earth, I find that a little bit suspicious and a little bit uncomfortable to kind of sit with. But at the same time, you know, they are doing a job of raising awareness. Gatekeeping, yes, but you see, if you're the sort of mind that gets to a gate and stays there, then, you know, that's on you, isn't it? Yeah. So, you know, with Flat Earth, I think there may be gatekeeping going on, keeping people interested, but keeping people in it. Sure. But I think for me anyway, I'll speak for me. I say that if that be true, that people are gatekeeping around me, what value is it for me to try and spend my energy in that pool of are they, aren't they, I must kind of call them out and so on. I'd much rather put my energy into you know, continuing my own trajectory. And the Bro Sanchez thing with Bob and the Awake Souls boys, Ronnie and Jason Laughingberg. You know, what you see there was a 2 or 3 hour show damaged by the infighting. I went on a show recently called Sun and Moon, and you know, my presentation that I was looking to do was hampered because I didn't have the right panel to chew the ideas around. I had a panel that were more interested in not, or weren't interested in chewing those ideas. They wanted to spit that stuff out and go elsewhere. And so I know how that affected my ability to do a good presentation, and it certainly stymied any conversation on, or any idea throwing around of ideas and so on, that really we should be really focusing on. Because if you wanted to be a shill, if you wanted to be you know, someone who is in there to muddy the water, then the easy way to do it is to get people arguing with each other, because then we're no longer building on information. So we humanity have some way yet to go, I think, don't we? And maybe that's why we shouldn't be so impatient about the unrolling of the truth about who we are. I think things are happening in their time, as they're meant to. Would I love for the lid to be blown off the Vatican's vaults, and for us to be able to go and do some due diligence and proper research on what they know? Of course, do it today. Why haven't we done it yesterday? But for the fact that everybody in control is being controlled. And then when you talk to the average man on the street, well, they might call the police on you. Now, when you talk to the average man on the street, they've handed off all their responsibility, all their kind of their authority. They've given their authority away. From children, we've been told to give our authority away to a globe, to a science teacher, to a religious teacher. And so today we continue to do that through the aegis of government, scientists, TV. You know, we give away our authority, and so the religious folks can sort of, you know, they don't have, they can, their morality comes from their religion rather than from their heart, perhaps. Common sense no longer comes from inside, it comes from an external science, peer-reviewed study with a whole lot of mathematical equations and a raft of Einsteinian theorem and conjecture. You don't have your senses about you until you learn that the earth is flat and not moving, or stationary, I should say, and not bending around. You only start to get your senses back then, and it takes a while for those senses to come back on stream. But for me, the trajectory has been, I found that, then I found out that I was much more important than some material lump of goo that was a monkey and now a man. And for me, that has only helped my spiritual progress and my personal evolution as a righteous, upstanding, decent man, a good man. But I've needed these things. I've needed this journey. I've needed this truth to help me along this way. And I expect that in the fullness of time, perhaps, most men and women will, if they haven't already, will walk a similar path. Does it happen in my lifetime? I'm not sure. Would I love for it to happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I now know that, after staring in the faces of hundreds and hundreds of people who are just blind and blankly dumb to the reality around them, then I know we're a long way from just turning a switch and saying to everybody, Earth is flat, we live in a reset system, the powers that be are a corruption and they've stolen your power or you've given away your servitude. We're a long way from that. And when you just look in the flat earth community, how much division and disharmony and whatever is there. Oh. It's in here a long time. How much division and disharmony is there in that movement? And I've already said this before, but if you haven't heard me say it, then I'll say it now, which is that even the Tartaria thing, for me, the mud flood and Tartaria history, again, has the potential to be a divisive tool because it suggests that there were people who were Tartarians and people who were not Tartarians, the Phoenicians, as Lee would tell you, or the there's a few others that are coming to that are out there. Are we still in a them v us kind of situation, or does Tartaria come back around to bite us on the butt as some kind of we wiped out the Tartarians? I don't know. But I am seeking, and I remain open to ideas. You don't have to be fixed on them, just keep an open mind. If we were the Tartarians and we're the survivors of that previous mud floods, wouldn't you love to know that? If we wiped out the Tartarians and we have a karmic debt to settle, then that would be good to know too. If we were somehow part of the soldiers, as I said yesterday in this video, that the Boer War might well have been like an attempt to wipe out the last major stand of the Tartarians. But I say that because the British committed more soldiers, 400,000 or something soldiers to the Boer War, more soldiers than any other war. It doesn't make much sense when you've got a few thousand farmers strung around a massive country like South Africa. You know, there's only a pocket of 50 here and maybe 100 there, but you've got to send 400,000 soldiers to address that. Twice, you got to do 2 Boer Wars. I mean, I feel like more of a loving human being today than I did a few years ago, by a long chalk. Far more connected to my humanity, far more connected to nature, far more connected to you. Really, to you, and you know, to my inner sense of knowing, my inner sense of rectitude, my inner sense of how we have a fundamental role to play, and that role has been played down, has been diminished, has been denuded by the floods or by the system. And we wouldn't be finding this out. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have access to so much shared information that seems to be coming together, were it not for a purpose. And I'll assure you that that purpose is not to go back to war. Imagine if we all find, you know, we all find that way to love and to kind of connect, you know, then I can imagine us having a rich society again in the future. But my friends in the Flat Earth community, unfortunately, we exemplify some of the things, the worst parts of our indoctrination and our desire to have some kind of egoic, you know, position over someone else. It's so ingrained in us, you know, and I see it now with my little boy. You know, I have to be so mindful about the content that he gets to see and so on, because this world is all about setting you up for a dialectic, a squabble, a them v us kind of thing. But it's all about us, and it's all about love, and it's all about you. I've got some, is that really? Rudy? Hey, mate. I got non-schooling. Yeah, non-schooling, that's somebody I will be making more good friends with, because non-schooling is where I want to be going. Okay. Non-schooling my boy. Astro King. Oh, sorry, the Black. Michael Cesar. I used to listen to Michael Cesarian. I don't now, but I did before a Flat Earth. I think I wrote to him and said, why aren't you looking at Flat Earth? I probably didn't get a response. Same as that Bill O'Donoghue, very knowledgeable religious dude, and you know, none of them want to go on that, do they? Anyone see Tartarian? No. Someone says explain Flat Earth. Problem with common sense is it's not. Yeah, you dream in 3D. I wish I had my glasses nearby. I can't see this too well. The guy who asked me to explain Flat Earth, I can't really. I don't want to do that now, because I get people come on my channel and, you know, they want to engage me in long discussions about things that I've already let go of. I met a nice chap in Hyde Park last year. He is on my YouTube as how I think it is really. He copped a little bit of grief overnight, I think, from Amarok, but I haven't looked into it yet. Because he's, he can't see the flat Earth, but he is a thinker, and he's like trying to work stuff out and so on. But I have to say, as nice as he is, I only have a certain amount of time to give to one person to explain certain things. At the end of the day, we have to work this out for ourselves. As I've said to pretty much everyone I've spoken to in the park about flat Earth, I say, you're going to have to go and look at this yourself. I can give you these clues, but if you're not willing to go and kind of unpick some of them, you're never going to find this. And I'm not going to exhaust myself trying to make that happen, because I can't be invested in your journey to this. And if you don't think that the Earth is flat, or an electromagnetic kind of plane of inertial plane, then you are, I'm not. I can only give you so much information, and then it's kind of on you. And if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. And I can't be invested in that, because, well, there's a zillion people who are going to follow you, who, and this is 4 years nearly, looking at flat Earth. So back in the first year, I was arguing it with everybody who came against the flat Earth. And that's a fight, that's a real battle, and I can't be in that, because that only derails my own heart, which is how I felt sort of in the summer of this year, or last year, because arguing with people, or having that kind of constant battle with people who are not yet there, or may never get there, is not really going to serve me or them. Because if you're, this is my experience, I haven't had many people come to, I've had one person come to me and say, oh yeah, for 2 years I argued against flat Earth. But in the main, I think people who argue against flat Earth will want to stay that way until consensus changes. I've got pilot friends who I told 3.5 years ago about this. They don't talk to me anymore. I've got the friends who I told right at the beginning, and they're not willing to see it still, or not able to see it still. So if someone wants to kind of troll flat Earth, they could do it forever. I think I've lost my picture. They want to troll, they'll do it forever. And if you want to spend your time fighting against people who can't see what you can see, that's on you, and that's up to you, and no foul, do what you must. But I can't, and so I don't give a lot of time to those people who insist on it, who want to fight on it. You can lead a horse to water, but a pencil must be lead. I like that. You can only shove it. Can't shove it down their minds. No, and that's the best thing. That's the best thing. Who said that? Does that say sheep's realm? Stacy's realm. I hope I'm not. Sorry, my eyesight's not great on this. I like that, and that if you are a woman, and that's kind of appropriate. I think that my wife is Andrea is often at pains to kind of to press me not to be so dogmatic, or she like most people like the love thing. They want the love. They want the kind of unity. They want the connection, not the fighting. They don't want the fighting, and we're doing so much of that. So I'm saying, bring them the information. Be willing for people to laugh at you. And shit, people laughed at me a lot last year. you know, Andrea was sometimes in the park with me, and she'd say, yeah, when they were walking past you and behind your back, they just mocking the heck out of you, you know. And be prepared for that. But, you know, let's perhaps be on our own journey of not wanting to stay in the fight. You know, I want to have a much more energetic year 2019 in terms of doing my part for the collective awakening, call it whatever you like, but you know, and so I, you know, I'm going to continue. That's why I'm talking now. That's why I'm continuing to press this channel and so on, because I want to be a voice, and I want to help lead people to their own truth. You know, I used to be in a fitness instructor, and I suppose I could still consider myself to be that, you know, but my mind is different now in that I would much rather teach you how to make yourself fit rather than stand over you and for an hour and force you to be fit in the way that do you know what I mean? It's like learn your own body. So when you go stretching, you know, you sometimes you need to go to a yoga class, but really you should be able to stretch your own body out. You should be able to massage your own body out. You should be able to feel what is right for your body in terms of how fit you are, how taut you are, what you're eating, what's making you feel sluggish, and so on. And you only get that when you start to trust yourself and you start to listen to yourself. You don't get that while you're listening to the preacher on a Sunday. I hope that doesn't sound like me, but you don't get that by somebody else telling you this is what you need to eat, this is what you need to do. Go and get the lessons. I mean, by all means, you know, this guy I've been listening to recently, and I know I was, you know, Vegan Warrior is someone who has some great information, by the way, and I was, so it wasn't, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And another one from the sort of Bro Sanchez community that I listen to is a Masterpiece. MASTA piece. You know, go and learn what you need to learn about your body, and then take care of yourself. Don't be going to the doctor to take care of you. Don't be going to someone else to take care of you. It is really about you. And so we do need to think that as we have a leadership role to guide people towards the truth about who and what they are, because once they know that, then they can empower themselves to take the steps that I've taken to become cleaner, better, you know, clearer, and so on. Hey, there's Richard Lopez. Richard, my friend, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on your show the other day. You know, I've been talking a little bit about Tartario recently, and I mentioned a few of the bigger names, channels, and so on. And I forgot to mention yours by mistake, and I'm setting that straight right now. I did earlier in this feed actually, but you know, you're an exciting guy to listen to and an interesting voice, and you know, your energy is definitely worth having in the community and so on. And you know, so we need people like that. You know, we need people like, you know, Richard's, you know, bringing people into, you know, thinking about things that they haven't had to think about. And damn it, Tartaria and Mudflood are for me easier to talk to than Flat Earth. If you want to keep people's attention, start with Mudflood and get to Flat Earth. Don't start with Flat Earth, because the shutters are down. The moment you say flat and earth in the same sentence, you've lost often you've lost the discussion. And I can say that with the confidence of having had this discussion 100 times and more with people I don't know, you know, in a public forum. So, you know, so I think, so I would go and, you know, I've been thinking about how I approach Speaker's Corner in 2019. You know, what's the angle going to be? How are we going to do this? And I think, you know, sometimes I feel like I'd rather go there on an anti-NASA platform than go on a Flat Earth platform. You know, and it's not because Flat Earth doesn't matter. It's absolutely, it's critical. It's the field the game is played on. So without it, you're lost. But you want things that people can kind of, you know, connect in their minds and stuff without calling it out, fully, then I think that there has to be cleverer ways of addressing these things as we go forward, and there have to be better ways of coming at it, so we're not in the fight, we're not in the pit, We need more ladies, more women, more love, more of that, and I'm seeing that actually. I'm seeing an increase, an uptick in the number of female voices and the female energies that are around, and this is only going to be a good thing for the awakening. But if you think that people have to be dogmatic, it's flat earth, it's flat earth, it's flat earth, well, that's a mistake. I think that's a mistake. And on that basis, I think we've got to box clever, we've got to be smarter than the system. And if you're worried about the system putting shills and so on in that, then there are going to be the people who want you to say, oh no, it's only flat earth, it's only flat earth, don't talk about anything other than flat earth. Well, trust me, from my experience, it's not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. We have to be smarter. We're a very smart group. We have to be smarter. So nice to have my friend Richard there. I'm hoping you'll invite me back on someday, my friend. Yeah, brilliant channel, Richard Lopez. I mean, he's an asset to. You are an asset to. You'll be in the UK in September. That's cool. I heard Paul on the plane say that same thing, actually, just the other day. That's really good news. It'd be nice to give you a hug, brother. I don't know if you've heard this, so I happen to be Robin, who's organising it, the Flat Earth Convention in the UK in September. He did invite me to speak at the convention, and I accepted that invitation. I may have actually put my hat in the ring before he even got a chance to send me an offer. But that's by the by, because as I say, I feel like I didn't last year. I was invited to speak last year at the convention, but I chose not to because I wasn't sure where it was all going, and I went along, but I wasn't confident about speaking, and I wasn't sure I had something to say. But I have something to say now, so I'm saying it. Thank you. Was that Stacy again? Damn. Yeah. I did a little talking. I spoke at the end of the Globe Light tour, and I tried to speak off I wrote like a little spiel, and I tried to speak off that, and I was absolutely appalling. Well, it's maybe a little harsh, but I wasn't very good. I'm much better just talking on the fly. If I have a couple of talking points, and I'll just talk on the fly. I'll have to see. I mean, if Richard's coming out there and perhaps talking about Tartaria and stuff like that, and Mudflood, they're better researched than I am. But I can talk about this thing about the love, man, and the humanity and so on. This is really what I was wanting to. I haven't finalized my thing with Richard, with Robin, but that's really where I think we have to move to. Is let's not be like the UFO community where we all get together once a year and talk about sightings, because it's much more than UFOs. It's much more than flat Earth, and the flat Earth is like our springboard. It's our point, to get to Mudflood, to get to hidden histories about who and what we are, and eventually bring people to their senses. Yeah, bring people back to their senses. Anyway, I don't want to keep labeling on here. Talk about the agenda. What's that? Transpocalypse. Nouveau Ordre of the agenda. I'm not sure if that's transpocalypse. You mean after the apocalypse? After an apocalypse? I mentioned something about that yesterday. Like, okay, if we have a mud flood and then it happens, what are we going to do? And my wife was like, "Why are you being talking such angry stuff?" Yeah. Anyway. Oh, how I think it really is. Hello, mate. My NASA thing. It's nice to have people who don't believe in who still want to hold on to the ball kind of thing, because they do keep us sharp. They do make sure that we are, that our research is on point. Even if they are, continually willing to accept whatever NASA excuses come our way about why this doesn't work or that works, or why we don't bother putting cameras on rockets as they leave the atmosphere, and why an astronaut has never done a 360 on a spacewalk, and why we do get these bubbles in spacewalks, and why the spacesuit is the same spacesuit they use in a swimming pool at 2 or 3 bars of pressure versus a 0 gravity anti-pressure. All these kind of silly things, and while people continue to believe that, it's hard to take them seriously. But sometimes they come up with some valuable points for us to consider. But let me. Hey, my boy's awake. I'm gonna have to rock and roll. But let me just say, I think it is really all about love, and if we can kind of work on that, then we will be in a much better world. So I thank you